Hey, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you painting resin with the Lucky Kitties. These kitties and I have been through a lot. They have taught me patience and perseverance and just how stubborn I really am. So this will be about how to paint resin, and I'm going to go through all the things that I did wrong so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes. So learn from my mistakes. They turn out so well once you figure it out. So it took me 6 months to figure it out. I really hope it doesn't take you 6 months to figure it out because they're really, really cute. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I did wrong. Let's hope that it prevents you from making the same mistakes. So I started with trying to outline just a basic white resin kitty in black paint. I will link where I got these molds below. I love these molds. I love this mold maker. You know, the shipping is incredibly fast. He's really amazing. But learning to paint these is something else. So I tried with just the black paint. I used a dotting tool. I tried with a paintbrush. It mostly just made a big mess. The black would just bleed into the main body of the kitty. No matter what I did. You can see I'm going to try painting the tail. The tail I've already painted white. This is the second coat of black, trying to cover where the white covered the black, and now I'm trying to cover the black, and then I try to paint the white again, and then the white, it just was a horrible repeating cycle, and this is just straight black acrylic paint, but this really, this did not work. So then I decided to paint the body of the kitties first, and I was using white because I thought it would be easy to paint over top, and the colors would come out bright. But in that, I found that the outlines weren't very good. You know, they needed to stand out. They needed to be contrasting, and the white didn't really work well for that with most colors. So this is just a watered down pink paint. It got good coverage. This for the most part worked well, and all was happy until I tried to outline. In my haste of trying to outline, I decided, okay, I'm going to use a Sharpie. This was easy to apply, but once again, things went very, very badly, and I'll show you later on in the video. The Sharpie ends up bleeding everywhere and making an absolutely huge mess. I wish this worked because it would have solved a lot of problems. Now I've decided that to be cleaner and easier, I'm going to use gel nail polish. It's essentially like an LED resin, so I thought it would go fantastic. So it was easy to apply. It left, an easy, clean finish. I thought, oh, I'm going to win on this one. It was, everything I wanted. It left such a nice finish. It didn't take very long. It was easy to clean up. Then if you put it just slightly too thick, you can see here it ripples. And this happened constantly. It just rippled on top of the resin. And there's a kitty that looks like this, and I wish I saved it, but I didn't. Then I moved on to painting the mold itself. Some people have very, very good luck with this. I found it a huge pain in the butt. It took a long time to paint. I decided I'm going to give it a shot, so I painted the body first, and then I went on with trying to fill in some of the detail areas with the black and the darker color. This could work. It didn't. Not only did I find it a pain trying to keep the paint clean in the mold, this is when I tried to add a resin backing to it. The paint ended up lifting, and I wish I had the video, but I can't find it. And the pink and purple resin ended up going underneath the paint, so then half of it was painted and half of it was not. And I did end up keeping these. You can see them at the end, because it does show, like I did manage to fix it, and they're a good example of what happens when your paint is too thick. I was not heartbroken this didn't work. I did find it a pain. I'm just adding some white alcohol ink here, trying to kind of make the back more opaque so it's less translucent. Again, it goes right underneath that paint, and I get a half pink face with a half painted face, so I ended up having to hand paint them anyway. Some people really like this method. You can give it a try. It was definitely not for me. I found it took just as long, if not longer, trying to paint in the small areas of the mold. I actually tried to record the sound for this part live. This is showing all the problems I had. That's why my hands look like I'm talking, because I am, so I'm really sorry. So this was kind of the aftermath of months and months and months of frustration and trying to figure this out. And I will at the end show you what actually works. And it's so easy. I don't know why I was trying to come up with these weird and wonderful ways to do this. So this was a couple months of kitties and how the good and the bad, we'll put it that way. So when I said that the Sharpie ran, the first two kitties that I'm going to pick up, this is what the Sharpie ran. So these were painted with an airbrush ink, which also didn't work that well. The ink wasn't straight acrylic. There was some sort of medium in it, and it did bleed in the resin. You can see that there's a couple of air bubbles in the resin, which is always frustrating. The camera will come into view in a second. The gold color that was used, you can see that it ran near the temple area, and that the Sharpie kind of just disintegrated, and they look like they're old. In this one, knowing that the Sharpie disintegrated, I tried to seal it. I believe I tried to seal it with Mod Podge, and you can actually see it lifting if you look carefully. So between the running Sharpie and the Mod Podge, it just looks absolutely terrible. So that was a really big disappointment. This one I actually used the nail polish, and it turned out not too bad, the gel nail polish. The colors aren't very bright, I found, especially in some of the other ones, which unfortunately I can't seem to find. The ones that rippled, you could see the ripples right through. It just completely ruined them. For this one, it turned out okay. The colors were muted a bit, and on a lot of the other ones that I tried, the colors actually blew out and ran over time. Not right away, but as the months progressed, the colors would blow out and they would run. And in some cases, the resin, especially in the ones that were fluid-filled, the nail polish actually moved as a whole, and it would just kind of float around with everything else in the shaker versions. So this one itself, not too bad. Would I recommend this technique? No. Am I disappointed? Yes, because I do find it easy to paint with. Even in super, super thin coats, I would still have problems with rippling. For the next two kitties, these are the ones that I painted the actual mold before I put the resin in. So for the most part, they look pretty good. The lines aren't as defined as they should be. I do like the gray actually instead of the black outline. I tried to put it in focus for you. They turned out okay. Again, on the one with the stars in his hand, you can see that the paint is actually quite thick. That might have been the one that I repainted, and you can actually see through. Oh, you can see here that the lines aren't very clear. The lines came out kind of almost fuzzy looking. And I tried to paint the white first to prevent a fuzzy looking outline, but it didn't really work. And this is what I was talking about on this one. If you look, maybe the camera doesn't pick it up, but the thickness of the paint does show through the resin. The paint can be a little bit not perfect, and the resin doming will hide that, and it will still come out with a really perfect finished product. But in this case, the paint was just too thick, and you can see when you look close. And I was disappointed in the outline lines. They didn't come out as clear as I liked them. These are some more trial ones. They're just different backings on them, different paint jobs. I really tried to play with the backing. I did find that pouring a plain black outline the best. In this one, I'm trying to show that you can see the micro bubbles that I got. There are a few things that people do to avoid the micro bubbles. I do have kind of like a recipe that I use, and I generally add, even if I use a base acrylic in my resin to try to make my color more opaque. I do add a few drops of the same color in the Let's Resin Alcohol Ink Colors 4 resin, and that does help pop those bubbles, is putting that little bit of those inks in there. And this one, you saw, I'm picking little bits of latex off. Because these molds are done from 3D printed originals, they do have like sharp corners on them, and because of those sharp, those sharp corners, the resin does seep down and underneath. So I have found it absolutely imperative to latex the back. I know some people use glue. I just happen to have latex around because of Halloween, and it does work really, really well. So again, try to avoid those bubbles. I do like the black backing the best. I find it the quickest to paint, and then I don't have to worry about outlining. So I will show you next how I actually achieve these and how to quickly paint them with the best possible outcome. So here we go. What actually works? Pour a layer of black resin in your molds. There's a couple of white ones here because I want them to have white outlines because they're predominantly black designs. Just for fun, to make the backs more interesting, I'm going to add these are the Let's Resin Chameleon powders, and I'm just going to rub it on the back. This just gives a little bit of dimension and a little bit of interest to the backs of these, so they're not just a plain black backing. It doesn't really matter which of the colors, they all look really, really good. They all give a really good effect on the back. So I'm just using the paintbrush that it came with. It doesn't take too long. The resin has dried for a while, like it is pretty solid at this point. So it is like a two-step process to give the best backing. But it's still less frustrating than trying to paint the outlines of any of these black. So just for fun, I've added a little bit of sparkle to the back of this, just to add a little bit of dimension, again, just to make the backs less boring. And I'm just gonna finish filling the molds. They were about 2/3 of the way full already, so I don't have, after I've done this, the backs don't need to be domed again. They're usually pretty well domed when I'm done. This just shows the definition. It kind of gives a neat dimension to the back. And there is my happy Totoro. Sorry I didn't have any footage of the kitties doing this. I was still frustrated and mad at them at this time. You can see one kitty. This is the one I'm going to paint next. So here's my little kitty. I've painted some of the black already because the black's not that exciting, and now you can actually see a bit of the definition. There's my shiny back. Something is stuck to it. The paint that I have found that works, is just any acrylic paint. Find your favorite acrylic paint. In this case, I am using the Liquitex Basics Fluid Paint. I've had really good luck with this paint. It doesn't have to be mixed very much because it's already liquidy, so it doesn't go clumpy. I was having some problems with some colors going clumpy as I tried to mix them. So I've added the black already. If the black goes, if anything goes over the edges, this is just a tiny bit of alcohol, that's it, on a Q-tip, and we're talking just a tiny, tiny bit, and I'm just going to rub that along the raised edge and clean it up a bit. That's all it takes. And if you rub a bit too much, just get out your paint again, and really, this is the easiest way to do it. Plain acrylic paint. I tried all the additives, I tried all the extenders, I tried a ton of different, I don't know why I went down such a weird rabbit hole, but I did. So find your favorite paint. The only color that I found has not worked for this at all in the Liquitex fluid line is the yellow. It's too transparent. So if you look here at that clear one, and at the next one there's a little bit of texture in the 3D printed mold. And this isn't a bad thing. You are not going to see the texture in the end. But you want the paint so thin that when it dries, you see that texture. That's where you're going to get the best look from this. So even these fluids, I still cut it half and half with water. Just water. And make it as thin as you like pot like as you think you need it. And I'm talking keep going. And that was my biggest mistake at the beginning, is as I just wasn't making the paints thin enough. And I thought I was adding way too much water, and it's better to make it too thin and have to add a small thin layer of another coat than it is to have them too thick. And this will cause it to go on smoother, easier, quicker, with less frustration. Just trust me on this one. So it's literally like for these ones, 50-50 water. If you're using a thicker paint, add more water. That was my favorite paintbrush, and it was totally destroyed. So I'm really bummed about that. So I'm just using a dropper, and I'm just adding plain water. These are, they're like Amazon mini Q-tips that you can get. And once that little knob comes off, usually you use them once and then that little thing falls off. They make great painters for these, so I keep them around, and you can see how much I've used this one. I find they work, because they're so fine and they're flexible, they worked a lot better than the metal dotting tools, or even the stiff plastic ones. These are definitely my favorite thing. In later videos, for larger areas, sometimes I will just use like a paint palette spatula because it does carry a little bit more paint on it. But if you can see just how fine, how thin that paint is, and that's what you're looking for to make this easier. And then it goes quite quickly. I made it a little bit too thin, but we're talking a smidgen. And again, the nice thing about these paints is they don't go lumpy, especially in the browns. For some reason, when I'm using like a burnt umber acrylic paint, I just find they're always kind of chunky. It's weird. It's kind of gross. So I'm just using the tip of this plastic to transport the paint and just moving it around within my mold. Again, if you paint outside of the lines, it's not a big deal. Just go back with the other color. I usually find that I do almost like a coat and a half. Like I do the whole thing, I touch it up, and then I kind of do whatever I need to do with the same colors again. And most of them, like the black goes on just fine with one coat, but the second coat doesn't take long. It's the first one, you know, that first really good coat. It's like painting a wall, right? That first good coat takes so much longer than the second coat. I also find that one of the biggest tips that I can give to paint these is to just let it dry. Give it lots of time. Don't do one color at a time. If you know, I find that if I try to do too many parts, I end up sticking my finger like in the wet paint, and then I, you know, smudge it on something else, and then I'm repainting it again. Just be patient. Let it dry. You know, you probably, if you're anything like me, have a couple of these going at the same time. Just go work on another one and come back to it when it's dry. Patience. Be patient. And they do come out absolutely beautiful in the end. The reason I'm going to show you doming all these little guys is I want you to see that the paint isn't perfect. It's not all, some of these were done before I figured it out, but the paint isn't perfect, and it's okay. It's okay, because in the end, the doming process is going to hide it. So this is just clear resin. I use Let's Resin Clear. It's my favorite. These little silicone stir sticks, I got these off of Amazon. I think they're fantastic. They work really, really well for doming. I was going through too many popsicle sticks, and popsicle sticks are actually really hard to get in my area. I don't know why. Either they're really expensive, or when I go to the dollar store, I get these really terrible ones. So just, you know, you can literally see as I'm adding the resin on top here that the little lumps and bumps are disappearing. And you'll get such a beautiful finish on these, whether you use them for keychains or pins or bag charms or whatever you want to use them for. You can even put a magnet on the back of them. You know, there's so many options when you paint the resin. You're not just limited to, you know, kind of solid colors or swirly patterns, or, you know, you can really customize your pieces paint by painting the resin. And as long as you just water it down, it comes out really, really well in the end. So we're just going to add a couple little sparkles here, and this is my story of the Lucky Kitties. I can tell you that this has tied up my time. Again, I don't know why I'm so stubborn, and I decided I was going to make this work. I'm really happy I did, and I really hope that you learned from my issues. If you could, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really appreciate it. It helps me out a lot. And in the end, here they are, my Lucky Kitties. Thank you.